Hey, I'm Andrea Warnock, and I'm so glad that you've joined me for this. So, I'm going to tell you just a little bit about myself. My husband and I have a podcast that we do called Marriage by Design, where we talk about marriage and family things and kind of just stuff about life and raising children and marriage. So, that's called Marriage by Design. And I have four children, 10, 5, 2, he's almost 3, and 6 months. And I have been homeschooling for the whole time that my 10-year-old has been in school. And he's actually sitting here with us, which is cool. So he's going into 4th grade, and we've been doing the homeschooling adventure since he was in kindergarten. And I don't have any other school agers. I just have him, but I've had a lot of littles along the way. Next year, Ryan, my 5-year-old, when she's 6, she'll start kindergarten, but right now we just have one. So I wanted to do this live event to just kind of talk about homeschooling and give some lessons that I've learned along the way and hopefully be a help, because this is probably the most time in history that people have chosen the homeschooling path and done the distance learning thing and all that. And so it's a unique situation that a lot of people are in. And I'm just hoping that what I've learned can help other people, and that I can be here to help answer questions and talk about all things homeschooling. So I'm going to go through just kind of different categories of homeschooling, and then feel free to ask questions in that category, and then at the end you can, or ask questions as you want to, but if they fit in the category we're talking about, great. And I'll answer them along the way, and then I'll give some time at the end to just sweep up on any other questions you might have. So I'm going to start with curriculum, and talking about some curriculum things. So I would say with curriculum, I know that there is such a huge sea of options when it comes to curriculum, and that can be really daunting for some people, and for some people it may be really exciting. Kind of just depends upon your personality. I would say there's so much great curriculum out there that it's hard to go wrong when you choose something. I mean, to choose something that ends up being just really awful, it would be surprising, because there's so much out there in regards to reviews that you can find from other people, and just such a wide world of it. So you can go in any direction with curriculum. You can get different curriculum for each subject, or there's a lot of curriculum that does it all. You can buy like the complete package and just say, all right, we're doing this curriculum for everything. And it's kind of, again, just what you want. To get an idea of what others feel is good, or kind of people that you can actually talk to about it rather than just reading reviews online, you might want to join a Facebook group, a homeschooling Facebook group, and ask some questions there, or look at what questions have been asked previously. You could join a homeschooling group, that meets up every once in a while, and ask some questions there as well. There's also, in a lot of places, used curriculum sales, and you can actually have your eyes on the curriculum with that by going to those used curriculum sales. If you know homeschooling people, ask if you can physically look at their curriculum in the books and see what you think. But you're also not nailed down to a curriculum that you choose. So if you choose something and you're like, oh my gosh, I really just don't like this at all, then don't stay with it. If it's a money thing and you don't want to buy new, then stick with it through the year, finish that year out, and then next year find something else. You're not locked into one type of curriculum, or one particular set of curriculum for the entire schooling journey that you do. So if you need to dump one in the trash because it just doesn't work for you, not meaning that it's bad, it just doesn't work for you or whatever, no problem. There's tons of other options out there. So don't feel like you're locked into something once you choose it. I would also really strongly encourage you to use the actual book curriculum for most everything rather than online. And I have a lot of reasons I could give you for that, but our kids spending a lot of time in front of a screen is not good for them. It's not good for their development. It's not good for the way they process things. Just screen time should be limited, and having all of their curriculum online, this is just really personally, I think is not helping them. So some of it online is really great. There's some awesome things that you can find online, but I would really strongly encourage you to veer away from everything being on a computer. There's also something to be said about writing things, and in looking at a book and being able to flip through it. And so I would just strongly encourage not doing a curriculum that's fully on the computer or online. Some curriculum that you can use can be on CD. We do a curriculum for history that I really love called Story of the World, and it's so great because it brings history to life. It gives great stories and great information. It's something that really captivates my child, and we've been doing this since either kindergarten or first grade. I love this curriculum, Story of the World. They sell it in book, and they sell it on CD too. So as a mom, it's great because I can set him up with the chapter that he needs to go through that day, set the CD player up to go. Well, he's old enough, he can do it himself now, but you get the drift. And he can do that himself. I love listening to it because I think it's great curriculum, but I don't have to be sitting there and actually teaching him. So that's another thing about curriculum is some of it you can work to where you're not actually the one teaching them. Something like a CD is a great alternative to actually teaching every single part of that subject. Another thing I would say, okay, so I'll give you some of my favorites. For English, I love Logic of English. It is such an in-depth discovery of the English language. I've learned a lot as an adult going through this curriculum with my child. There's a lot of repetition through the grades. So there's a lot of coming back to concepts and repeating those as they move along in this curriculum. So Logic of English is amazing. They learn the English language, they learn spelling, they learn reading really, really well. And then Saxon Math. I really like Saxon Math. And that's a pretty popular program for math. I really like that. And then, like I said, Story of the World for history is awesome. The other thing with curriculum is I think it's really great to plan for some read aloud time. Read aloud reading to your kids is something that they've done a lot of studies on. Experts have done a lot of studies on. And you can set your child up for so much success just by reading to them from a young age all the way through even through high school. And I know that sounds crazy, but reading is so good for your kids. So plan some read alouds. Get some books that maybe correlate with what you're learning in history or correlate with what you're learning in science, or just some books that are interesting, and read those to your kids and just work that into your curriculum. I think it is so important, and the experts tell us that it's important too. And it's a great time of just being together that's a little bit more relaxed and not like I'm teaching you something, you need to learn this. So the other thing I would say about curriculum is if you have multiple children that you're homeschooling, plan for overlapping in subject areas. So science, some of your kids can probably do the same science. And maybe you have a fourth grader and a second grader. You can do the same science curriculum. Maybe you choose to do a little bit more with your fourth grader and make that a little bit more robust. Maybe you don't. That's okay. Science, history, literature, those things you can overlap, and then you're not doing everything for both children separately. So it's not like everybody's learning something different and I have to teach every subject to my second grader, and then I have to teach all the subjects to my fourth grader, and there's no overlap. You can totally overlap some of those subjects and make it easier on yourself. So the last thing I want to say is don't overdo it. I think that can be something that, particularly as a new homeschooling parent, can be a temptation, is to say, oh, we're going to do, the core things, but then we're going to add in a language, and we're going to add in home ec, and we're going to add in, all these things, which sound great, and they are great. But when you're starting out, I would so highly suggest to not overdo it, because you don't want to be doing school all the time, and you may be overwhelmed by just the core subjects. So kind of get a feel first of how it's going, and then maybe you want to add some along the way. But it's a temptation to overdo it, and don't fall into that, because you don't want to feel overwhelmed just from the get-go. Okay. Next, I'm going to talk about being prepared. So with homeschooling, at least for me, I find it's super important for our homeschooling days to be prepared. And that can make or break our days. So being prepared for me looks like I'm reviewing the night before a general idea of what we're doing the next day. I'm kind of looking at the lesson plans and having a general idea of what's planned for the next day. I'm making sure that the house is cleaned up, because just the way I am, I don't function well when there's mess all around me. So we do a good job of cleaning up the house. It doesn't need to be spotless, but I need to feel like there's some order and like things aren't just a jumbled mess. So we clean up really well the night before. I have our supplies ready for homeschooling. I have the lesson plans ready. I just have all that. All the books are ready to go. It's all ready. So I'm not scrambling the next day. I'm not trying to do, I have 4 children, and 3 of them are littles. 3 of them are non-school age. It's a mess already. I don't need to be more like harried in my brain of, oh, what's going on and what do I need? To have it all there, all prepared, know what I'm doing in general is super helpful. So that's something that I do to be prepared. I don't plan outings for at least the first few weeks of a homeschooling year, or the first few weeks after like Christmas break. I don't plan for any outings on those homeschooling days at least before 3 o'clock. And even then, I really mostly don't go anywhere, because I don't know how long it's going to take. I don't know if we're going to get derailed and still needing to be doing homeschooling at 5 o'clock. I hope not, but it could happen. And to be able to just be sure that we're home, we don't have to meet anybody or be at an appointment. We don't have to try to do too much. Just having the plan of being home and homeschooling, and if we get done with that early, great, we'll just hang out, is a good thing. So don't plan for outings would be a suggestion that I have for your schedule and being prepared, at least until you get your bearings. The other thing that I need for me personally is to have my meals planned out for the week. So I don't want to be getting to 3 o'clock and thinking about dinner, and I'm trying to wrap up homeschooling and realizing, oh crud, I need something from the store. That is annoying. So having my meals planned out, having my grocery shopping done, and all of that is super helpful for me too. Bonus points if I have prep time earlier in the week, like on the weekend, to prep meals. I never do, but bonus points if I do. That's great. Also being prepared. This is not something I do all the time, but I really strive for it. And it's going to be really hard because this summer, I think I've set my alarm like 3 times. And I've maybe actually gotten up to my alarm like once or half a time. This summer, I have let my kids be my alarm. And so getting up before my children and getting ready, taking my shower, all of that is something that's important for me too, to stay on track with our homeschooling days. So again, I'm not like hurried to try to do things while I'm taking care of kids and feeding them and also trying to start a homeschooling day. It's really great for me, at least, to get up before my kids, be prepared, have my head on my shoulders. So anyway, that's important. And then the other thing I have here is know your plan, but I'm not sure what that meant. So maybe I'll think about that later. Okay. Do we have any questions?
A couple questions, yep. So first, how do you know, first of all, do states require certain types of things to be taught? And where would you find that information?
Great. Yeah, so the question was, do states require certain things to be taught, and where would you find that information? So I live in Nebraska, and I only know Nebraska. Yes. There are certain core curriculums that are required, and there's also paperwork that you have to file in every state if you're wanting to homeschool rather than send your child to school, to an accredited school or public school. So make sure that you're following those rules. So make sure that you're filing the paperwork to homeschool, and also looking into the core curriculum that's required. So in Nebraska, there is an hours requirement that you sign off on saying, I will be teaching my child this many hours every year. So there may be other requirements as well. Where I would say to get that is just because everybody may be from different states, Google like Nebraska homeschooling requirements, and you'll get to a government website and you'll find that. It's really easy to find. So yeah, make sure that you're following, that you're getting your paperwork done, that you're making sure that you have those subjects down. But it's not going to be, it's going to be math and science and English and history. You know, it's not going to be anything crazy, but make sure that you know what the requirements are. So that was a great question.
Perfect. Another comment that we had on Facebook from Leslie was, 1, you're so pretty.
Leslie, thank you.
And 2, she said, I need to meal prep. So maybe some suggestions on how or good ways to
meal prep.
Yeah,
so my friend Leslie said that she needs to meal prep. So what are some suggestions with that? I think the best way to meal prep is to not do it at all. And what I mean by that is, for maybe the summer months, because you are going to be leading up to homeschooling, give yourself a break the first little while of homeschooling, and just cook double of whatever you're cooking in a meal and freeze that second meal. That's the best way to have like meals ready, I think, in my opinion. So I would really suggest that meals that you're making like in the summers leading up to homeschooling, you just make double, freeze the second one, then you've got meals ready. For meal prep, I find what helps the most is I'm kind of working a week in advance. So probably on Thursday, I'm starting to think about my meal plan for the next week, making that out. I write down what I'm doing for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks, because, oh lordy, kids eat snacks like there's no tomorrow. What is the deal with that? But anyway, so I write down everything that we're going to have the next week, and then I make my grocery list, and then I do an online shop, because I don't want to take my 4 children to the grocery store to do an entire grocery shopping trip. So I do online, which is such a godsend, and I pick it up on Saturday morning. And then I have Saturday and Sunday to do meal prep. And if you're doing homeschooling, I hope that your spouse is in it with you. Mine is, and I so appreciate that. So maybe what you need to say is, hey, can we meal prep on Saturday night after we put the kids to bed? Or I need to do some meal prep Sunday afternoon while the kids are sleeping, or Sunday evening and you can take them to the park, whatever that looks like. Being able to meal prep on the weekends, so you're slicing your vegetables and, getting all that stuff done that you can do ahead of time is the best thing. And then it's so easy to put meals together during the week. Usually for like breakfast and lunch, I don't have meal prep done because those are pretty easy things to pull together right then. But dinner always seems to take a long time. So hopefully that answers your question.
So there's another question
that
might lead into your next topic. So the question is from Tammy, and it says, do you have a special designated area for doing school, like a desk or a separate designated room for doing school? Do you think that is necessary?
Yeah. I'm so glad you asked. This is something I was going to talk about, so I'm glad you asked. Do I have a designated schoolroom or area to do homeschooling? I have done everything that you can think of in regards to homeschool. I have tried it all, I feel like. So we used to have a classroom that was a really big room, and I had some toys in there for the little kids, and I had a desk and a whiteboard and all that sort of thing. That did not work well for us because we weren't close to the bathroom, which little kids needed a lot of bathroom time, I feel like. We weren't close to the toy room, which had all of the toys, which is where they wanted to be. We were just kind of off in a room, and it just didn't work well for us. So I nixed that, and we've tried homeschooling in, like our dining room, but that was probably too formal, and I was feeling like I was having to be so careful with what the little kids were doing. So that didn't work well. What we do now is we homeschool at the kitchen table. I use one of those IKEA Raskog carts to have all the school books and supplies on. And so I get to just roll that out every night before, the next morning. I roll that out every night. It has all our supplies. I pull off what I'm going to need for the next day. And then we do it at the kitchen table because we're close to the potty. It's right next to our playroom. We're right where technology is. So if we need to watch a video or whatever, we have it all at our fingertips, really. And it's right near my kitchen because we're always in the kitchen. I don't know. Food is a thing, and always a thing, I feel like. So we're right smack dab next to the pantry and the refrigerator. So that's what we found is the best way to homeschool, is just doing it at the kitchen table. And our kitchen table it's one of those, probably everybody had them in the 80s and 90s. It's got that laminate on the top, and it's not the prettiest thing, but it's the perfect thing because you can't ruin that thing. It has been scribbled on and knives accidentally used on it, and it looks just great. So we got this table that works so well. It's a big table. Everybody can be around it if they want or not, and I don't have to be so careful with what we're doing there. So glue is on it, and it comes just right, glitter and glue and all that, it just comes right off. So for us, that has been what's worked the best. And there's other friends that I have that have like a dedicated schoolroom, and that works perfect for them. There's other people I know that kind of just travel around their house. We've tried that too. It didn't work. But there's other people who just kind of travel around their house based on the whim that they're feeling in the moment, and that works for them. So I would say with that, kind of feel it out, decide what works for you, and go with that. And it may change based on the people and ages that you have, and that's okay too. A lot of homeschooling is kind of what works for you. So if you don't have a room that you can have a dedicated space, that's totally fine.
Great. So there's another question, and it's kind of a combination of two questions, one from JJ and one from Tammy. And Tammy's question is, how do you plan? Do you plan a month at a time, a week at a time, or a day at a time? And then JJ asks, do you have a type of homeschooling program that you use?
Okay.
And then I'll have a follow-up question from him when you're done.
Yeah. So Tammy asked, how do I plan? I cheat. I'm telling you that I I kind of cheat. So Jackson is part of a it's called Trinity Classical Academy. So it's a place that he goes to have some of his schooling done, and then so he goes 2 days a week, and then we homeschool 3 days a week. So they actually they put together our plan. I put together a plan for some of the things we do outside of TCA, but they put together a plan and I follow along. So I will say I'm kind of a cheater when it comes to the planning thing, but I have a lot of homeschooling friends that fully homeschool. They come up with their plans and all that sort of thing. And they do it all. Some of them will plan the entire year. They'll look at their math book, see how many lessons. Hey, we want to get through all the lessons. These are when we want to take our breaks in the year. I would probably follow that. Personally, I would do that plan where I'm going to look at all my curriculum, see how much I want to get through, or how much, or say I'm doing the whole book, and plan that out and plan out my breaks, and I would stick to that because it's so easy to get off track. And it's so easy to kick the can down the road, and be like, oh, today didn't work out to do homeschooling, we'll do it tomorrow, and now we're at the end of the year, we only got through half the book. So I think it's better to plan out a year and do it that way. But if you feel confident in doing monthly, that's cool too. Maybe people are totally flexible and like, if we take till June to get done, that's okay. I would want to be done sooner rather than later because I love the summer and I want to get every last drip out of summer that I can. So I think personally, planning the whole year out is good. And truthfully, you may plan the whole year and say, we're going to get through this whole book, all the math, all the English. Truthfully, you will probably wind up a little short, and that's okay.
Follow-up question then is your thoughts on...
Oh, yeah, JJ, hold on. JJ asked the question.
That's it.
Okay.
Your thoughts on calling you mommy versus teacher.
Oh, my thoughts on calling me mom versus teacher. I'm mom, so they call me mom. However, I think it's difficult for everyone to have this designation of I am mom, but I'm also a teacher. So there's a different there's a little bit of a difference. I have a little bit different requirement of my son when we're doing homeschool than if it was just us hanging out, So I will ask him sometimes, is this how you would treat a teacher? Because you're so familiar with your mom that it can be really tempting and just so easy to fall into that. She's mom. I'm going to, talk back to her and all that sort of thing. But they would never do that to a teacher. So there are times where I'm asking, is this what you would do in a class? Is this how you would treat a teacher? Is this how you would act around other students? So yeah, they call me mom. That's who I am to them. But there is a little bit of a different expectation when we're doing school than, not that I allow my children to disrespect me, but the familiarity of mom, we try to buffer a little bit of that with, this is school, I am your teacher, and that sort of thing. Hopefully that's helpful. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about kind of flow and schedule. This can be difficult to do, but I really strongly encourage you that during your homeschooling time to not answer texts or calls or emails or any of that sort of thing. Be present, be engaged, and that doesn't mean oh, you gotta, yeah, thanks. That doesn't mean from 8 to 4, I have to not answer my texts or take a phone call. We have like blocks of schooling that we do. So I may do one lesson of math with my son, and then we may take a break. And then that's a time that I can, do those sorts of things. But when I'm teaching math, I'm teaching math. I'm not paying attention to the texts or calls. So it's hard to do if you're somebody who's used to doing a lot of that, but it's super important to stay on track for your kids, and so for their brains and your brains, to be able to just stay on track and just be there and be present with that lesson. So and then have blocks of time too. Maybe those aren't totally set out. Like maybe I'll be doing school from 9 to 10, or maybe it's 9 to 10:30. I don't know. I'm just going to get through this block of things that I want to. But I would strongly suggest to have blocks of, particularly if you have little ones, blocks of this is what we're going to get done, and then we'll have a break, and then this is what we're going to get done, that sort of thing. Other things in regards to flow and schedule. A rookie mistake that a lot of people can make is that homeschooling needs to look like regular schooling. Home educating does not have to look anything like what you remember of your schooling experience if you went to school, or your child's previous schooling experience. You don't have to do 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. You don't have to have a list of the curriculum that you're going to get done that day that's the same every day. You don't have to bust out 3 subjects and then have recess and lunch and then bust out 3 more subjects. You come up with your own flow that works for you, and it's going to look different for me than it looks for somebody else. And for me, it looks different times of the year based on how old my kids are, what's going on with their development, if we've had another baby, which we seem to do all the time. So our flow and schedule changes, and feel free to do what works for you. We now, during nap times in the afternoon, we do our hardest, my son and my school ager and we do the harder subjects. So English and math are what I would say heavier subjects. We do those during nap time. And that allows for some real concentration, some quiet, and for us to really be able to do those without so many distractions around. So that's when we get it done. We used to do it first thing because our brains are fresh, but we found now we need to do it during nap time. And actually, this year that may change a little bit because we're going to try out doing our math and English in the evenings when Dad's home and he can hang out with the little kids, and Jax and I can do the math and English, and then probably during nap time he's going to be doing a lot of his independent work. So we're going to see how that goes. If it's a fail, it's a fail. We'll figure something else out. If it's a win, great. It'll work for now, and maybe that'll change at some point. So yeah, weekends and nights can work for school time. Your day doesn't have to look like a regular school day. I would also really say it's important to not be doing school all the time. Homeschooling there's a huge benefit that it doesn't take as long. You don't have all the classroom management issues. You don't have all the potty breaks of 25 kids. You don't have all of that stuff. You have more one-on-one time, so you just, of course, naturally get things done quicker, and so it doesn't take as long. And so if you're getting things done and you want to add a little bit in, great, but don't be doing school all the time. Have your teacher hat off for the times where it should be off. If you are normally the family who you get school done during the day and then your spouse comes home in the evening and that's not, then not. Don't do school then. Don't be teacher all the time. Be mom or be dad. I say mom because I'm the one who does the majority of the homeschooling. But realize that your role as a teacher needs to flip off. Because just like kids in public schools get to leave school and that teacher is left behind, so should the teacher in the home. They shouldn't have to feel like they're in school all the time. Let's see. Oh, a great thing to do is ask your kids what they think might work for them. So ask your kids, would you like to start with a subject that's harder for you? Would you prefer to leave that till later? Would you like to, if there's little kids around, would you prefer to try to do homeschooling in the evening on some of those subjects or not? Get their input if that makes sense for your family, and try it out. And then always feel free to change up things if you need it. If you've tried something and it just doesn't work, that's the great thing about homeschooling, is that you can change it up. Any questions? You want me to keep going?
The question that I would ask is, so someone may be watching this that they're homeschooling because their public school has gone to e-learning.
Mm-hmm.
Any of these things that you think would be different in that situation?
Okay, so the question was, some people may be homeschooling or distance learning because their school has gone to distance learning. And so it's kind of a homeschool, public school hybrid sort of thing, because you're being fed everything and, being required to stay on track with what the public school is saying. Take some of this and leave some of this. So it just depends upon what your school is requiring. I know some in our area are requiring that the children who are distance learning have to be online to view the live lessons. And so they have to be online, maybe from 8 to 3 at certain parts of the day during 8 to 3. So then you can't really change up the times that you do the lessons because that's the requirement. It just kind of depends. But if it's a distance learning thing where your child is watching live lessons, then they can maybe go into a separate part where there's not so many distractions to be able to listen to that. And you can, if you have little kids, you can be the one with the little kids. And there's a little bit more flexibility for some quiet time for them to process the lesson better. Okay, the next thing I'm going to talk about is expectations. So, expectations. You may need to lower them. If you are a high achiever, perfectionist type, you may need to lower your expectations, because at least for me, homeschooling is not what I envisioned it. It was not this perfect world where we are trucking through perfectly and I'm the best teacher that my son could learn from, and we jive and get it, and my littles are sweetly playing over in the corner and they're answering some of the questions because they're just listening in. Nope, our homeschooling does not look like that. And if yours does, more power to you. I think that's great. But ours is some days a hot mess. But for some people who are high achievers or perfectionists, this may be a really hard journey to start off on. That's okay. I would really suggest lots of prayer and patience for that. So, again, you may need to lower your expectations of what you can do in a day, personally, like around the house and with your schooling. Or if you're on the other side of things, if you're more of a person who likes to kind of skate by and procrastinate, there's all sorts of personalities out there, right? If that's you, then maybe you need to raise your expectations of yourself. Remember, as homeschoolers, we are teaching our kids so much more than just subjects and the things that out of a book. We're on display for our children a lot more than if they went to school. So we have the opportunity to fail in front of them a lot more, but we also have the opportunity to teach them way more about things that are outside of a textbook. So again, know yourself, and if you're one to skate by, raise the bar. You're teaching them diligence, so teach that by being diligent yourself. You're teaching them patience. Do that yourself. And I'm talking to me too. I struggle with patience. I struggle with being stressed sometimes. I struggle with sometimes just teaching the material in a way that they're going to get it and not being frustrated when they don't, but having love and grace for the child. At times I struggle with those sorts of things, but I'm helping to teach my kids, and so it's even more important that I'm really trying to press into the Lord and getting better in those areas, and admitting when I fail and asking for forgiveness, but also trying to teach them things just by the way that I handle homeschooling in life. Don't expect too much from yourself. I think I talked about that some in the first few weeks in regards to housework and cooking and all of that sort of thing. You'll learn as you go on what's reasonable to expect. So it's not like I just say, oh, well, I'm homeschooling, so I guess the house is going to be a mess for 9 months. I have learned what I can expect from myself. And this is so homeschooling is a family journey. It's not just a journey of the parent, teacher, and the child. It's a family journey. And so you all get to be part of that. You all get to kick in extra because maybe mom doesn't have the capacity, or the homeschooling parent doesn't have the capacity to do what they were doing before homeschool because so much time and energy is taken up to do school. So as a family, we get to all kick in, which means we get to learn more about what's needed and how to clean bathrooms better and how to meal prep better. We get to all do that together. It's a family journey, and we talk about that a lot in our home when maybe kids are saying, I don't want to do that. And it's like, well, maybe you don't want to, but this is the journey that we've decided to take together, and so we're all going to pitch in. And this is for all of us. So maybe kids need to kick in more. Maybe a spouse kicks it up a little bit more than normal because, again, this is a journey you all take together. And then, okay, littles. Yeah, sorry.
Can I jump on a question real quick? So we have a question. How do you handle subjects that you aren't confident in or an expert about?
Sure.
Do you have other people or resources you go to?
How do I handle subjects that I'm not confident in or an expert about? And do I have other resources or people that I use? Yeah, so I will say, so Jackson's going into 4th grade, so it's not like things have gotten really tough. I'm not somebody who's taught like a high schooler yet, but I have, again, a lot of friends who are homeschoolers, so I can just give you kind of the knowledge and wisdom that they've given me over the years, and also tell you that I don't have this all figured out. I don't do everything perfectly, so this is just coming from me. So, stuff that I'm not confident in or don't know very much about. What's great about that is I'm learning right along with my child. History is not something that I took very seriously when I was younger. I knew a shocking small amount about history, and so I'm learning right along with my child. That may look like for you in a subject that you're not confident in, looking at the lesson before you teach it and getting a good grasp of it before you teach it. So it's just reality that we may be really poor in one subject and have to put in some extra effort to understand that before we teach it. A lot of the curriculum, though, particularly up to probably through junior high, is stuff that is probably pretty easy to pick up, probably pretty easy to teach and to remember, but some of it may require simply getting an idea of what's going on before you actually teach it. And again, that's extra work, but you've decided to do homeschooling, and that's part of it. Yes, use resources. So you may want to talk to some people in a Facebook group or a group of homeschooling parents that you know and get some help. There's all sorts of resources. You can get tutoring in a specific area. I don't mean you can get tutoring for your child in a specific area. Maybe you hire a high schooler or a college age person who knows that subject really well. excels in that subject, and they teach that subject to your child if it's something, and maybe they teach it to you and your child, so that if you have more coming through, you can be confident in that. But that would be my suggestion: is learn it along the way, and if that's just not possible, you can find somebody to help you teach it. You can find, even maybe that's a subject that you just choose to do that one subject online through an online curriculum resource, and they just do all of that subject through an online teaching program. Any other questions on that? Okay, so littles. I will say, when I started homeschooling, this was my biggest fear. Littles. How do I homeschool with the little people around who aren't in school, and they're a distraction, and they can be really hard sometimes. So I have some suggestions for that. First, I'm going to tell you it's hard. It's hard. There's no ultimate answer for what to do with littles and how to handle that. It's hard, but we're all in it together, and I'm better because I have learned to homeschool with my little ones around. I've learned better patience, better grace, better lessons. So anyway, I'm just going to be honest and say it's hard. So again, the whole family's doing this homeschool adventure together, so we're all learning things along the way, and we all sacrifice. Some of the sacrifice may be, it's harder to concentrate with a 3-year-old having a tantrum. It's harder. Maybe we have to take more breaks. Maybe we have to maybe get halfway through a lesson and it's just not going to happen right now, and we have to come back to it later. We're all sacrificing for each other, and when we talk about that and talk about giving grace and forgiveness, we're learning too along the way. And again, we're learning things that aren't in the textbook. So I will say, with little people, independence is taught, and it's taught slowly. So my children, from the time that they're born, literally from the time that they're born, learn independence, and they learn it very slowly. My 5-year-old, she just turned 5, is really great at playing independently for probably an hour or more. I don't have her do it very often, but she is good at it because we've expected her to learn that. And it didn't start at an hour. It started very small, but as she's grown, that time has grown too. She also is really great with playing with her 2-year-old brother for chunks of time. And they're not always great together. They're like oil and water sometimes. But they've also learned to play well together and play well independently and play well while we are doing homeschooling. So they know they know what's expected of them. They don't always follow that, but they know what's expected, and a lot of times they do, because we've taught them from the beginning about independence. So I would strongly encourage, if you have little people, to start teaching them independence, and just understand it's going to go slow. And that's just part of the process. Your flow and schedule is likely to change with different ages and having more children and that sort of thing. So just understand that it's cool if your homeschooling is looking different every 6 months or every year. That's totally a cool thing. With babies, you probably already know this, but wearing a baby is super great for having hands-free and also keeping that baby happy. All of my babies have loved being worn in like a baby Bjorn or whatever. It's a really great thing. So I strongly suggest wearing your babies during homeschool. You can set up busy bags and activities and that sort of thing beforehand. You can use your breaks from school, like summers and breaks that you take to get busy bags ready for little kids. If you're not that type of mom, and I'm not, totally fine. I'm not the type to set up activities for my little kids. I'm not the type to have busy bags. It's just not me, and I finally settled into the fact that I'm okay with that. I don't ignore my little kids during homeschooling, but I also don't have these grandiose Pinterest-style things for them to do. It's just not me. And I will say one thing that's been helpful is I do have toys and activities that are reserved for only homeschooling time. So those are things that they don't get normally, just every day, anytime. It's only reserved for them to play with or do during homeschooling time. So those can be things that are good distractions because they're excited about them. They don't get those all the time. They're excited about it when we're doing homeschooling and pull those things out. So that's a way that I've helped our homeschooling days by having those sorts of things. But if you want to set up activities, that's great.
What is a busy bag for those that might be interested in that?
Yeah, question is, what is a busy bag? Go to Pinterest and look at busy bag. So you can, or busy box or something like that. You can set up these activities that you put in. A lot of times they look like they're either a Ziploc bag or a pencil case or whatever, and they're learning activities or fun activities that your kids can do, like maybe color matching, or of course it depends upon the child, or sorting, or playing with little wiki sticks, all sorts of things that you can do. So that's what a busy bag is. Again, with independence, expect short bursts of independence. So our homeschooling day looks like we have a burst of homeschooling, and then we have a burst of playtime with the little kids. I will have time where I'm teaching, and then when I'm done teaching, I'll go be with the littles and do something, read to them, play with them, whatever, connect with them. And then maybe we'll have another burst of teaching where they're doing something by themselves, and then come back to them later. So we kind of have these bursts of school and bursts of playtime. And then maybe while I'm playing with them, my homeschooler is doing some independent work that he can do. You can involve your little kids when it makes sense. Don't involve them when it doesn't make sense, though. So with experiments and read aloud, coloring, projects, if you want to involve them, that's so great. Maybe they're even just sitting on your lap while you're doing homeschooling. But if that gets to be too overwhelming or too crazy, it's okay too to say, let's have 10 minutes where you go do this activity or you go play, and then I'll come and read to you, or I'll come and play hide and seek with you, or whatever. So it is fun to involve them when you can. If you're memorizing things, make up songs, and then you can all be in a band together and march around the living room and do this band. We do some of that. I talked about do school during naps if you can. Something that I found is really important with littles is I pour into them first before I start my homeschooling day. They're less likely to be so needy for attention if I'm playing with them or something like that before we even start our homeschooling day. It doesn't have to be long, 15, 20 minutes, but just doing something with them helps a whole bunch. Maybe you can trade time with another mom. If you're struggling with little kids, maybe you can watch her kids while she does some homeschool, and then vice versa. If you have several older children, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade and on, you can be teaching one child while another of your older children entertains the little ones. So, and then flop. That's a way to get some homeschooling done while you have littles around. Some days you need to throw in the towel. Some days it's not worth it to have the craziness. Some days you're taking too many steps back than you are forward, and you just need to throw in the towel. So that would be my suggestion with littles. We don't do that. It's super rare that we do that. Super, super rare. But sometimes that's the best. Any questions on littles?
None yet.
Okay. So then just a few other things to kind of sweep up. Just some random things. Don't feel like if you've chosen homeschooling or distance learning that you have to do this forever. Commit to it now and fully commit. So fully commit to it for the time. And maybe that time is this whole school year. And then reevaluate. Maybe this just isn't working and you need to do something else the next year. Maybe it's not working, but you still feel called to this, and it'll go better next year, or you'll still learn, how you need to change things next year. So anyway, don't feel overwhelmed that this is my life forever. Things change quickly with homeschooling. Things change quickly with littles, and you don't have to commit to this for a lifetime. I already said, but I'll say it again. You're teaching more than just what's in a book. You're teaching diligence. You're teaching working under pressure and stress. You're teaching patience. You're teaching love for those that matter the most, and love for those that derail the plan. So remember that as you're homeschooling. For me, subject matter is not as important as what's outside the textbooks. Although that's not an excuse for us to not get through the material, but it's a heavy weight to choose to do the homeschooling, because my failures are on display so much more, and I fail so much more because I homeschool, and that's a hard pill to swallow. But just I pray a lot, and I ask the Lord for His help, and just understand that we are learning more than what's in a textbook. Yeah, be who you are. If you're a Pinterest mom, that's so awesome. If you're not a Pinterest mom, that's awesome too. And ask your spouse to help ease the load. Be introspective enough to know what that looks like. Maybe you need Saturday mornings for yourself to get away and do something with your friends or take a walk, and your spouse can hang with the kids. Maybe you need more help with the house stuff and the yard stuff, or whatever that looks like. Hopefully your spouse is willing to kick it in a little bit higher gear, because there's more that's required of you. Yeah, and then I think the last thing is don't get too far behind. We're responsible for teaching our children. It's a big responsibility. It's a big weight. So help to set them up for the success. Don't get too far behind and keep kicking that schooling can down the road. Be diligent. Take this as this is a big responsibility, and treat it that way. Homeschool well, and you'll be great. Any questions?
How did you know that homeschooling was for you?
Oh, how did I know homeschooling was for me? I did not think that it was for a long time. I was so excited my kids are going to leave the roost for 5 days a week, and somebody else is going to teach them. And then my husband always wanted me to homeschool, and I was always saying, no way. But something changed in my heart the year before our oldest became school aged. And I don't know, we prayed a lot about it. We asked the Lord for His guidance, and my husband was a super big cheerleader of mine, and I had confidence in him. I had confidence in his confidence in me. I also had confidence in his willingness to help out in any way he could, and he does. He teaches some of the things that I really hate to teach. I hate doing presentations. I don't hate it. I just don't really love the whole presentation process. So my husband does a lot of that, and he's super willing to do it. He's happy to do it. So I had confidence in him, and I had confidence. We just heard from the Lord and knew that this was right for us. So no real great answer. But again, if you do homeschooling and you find out, oh, this is not for me, that's okay. You're not handcuffed to it for the whole lifetime of your child.
So you talk about taking it a year at a time, but do you feel like there's a right time for kids to be entered into school?
I talk about taking it a year at a time, but I feel like there's a right time for kids to start homeschool.
To go out into public school.
Oh, to go out into public school. Wow. That's going to be different for each family. There's no right answer to that. We have talked about that. We've talked about that a lot. The hard part is I know that they're not going to get as good of an education, because how good can you get one-on-one? That's such a great education, right? I know that they're probably not going to get as good of an education going to a public school, but maybe the right thing is for our kids to at some point go to a public school. So that's sort of a hard thing to accept, but that's okay. Knowledge is not, what you've crammed in your head for all those years that you went to school is not going to make you successful. There's other things that help to make you successful. So it's not like, oh, he has to be homeschooled and my kids have to be homeschooled and have all of the education that I could provide them being at home to be successful. That's not true. It's just a matter of doing what's right for your family. And maybe that means sending them to a public high school or homeschooling them the entire time. But if they are homeschooled, be intentional about being social too. Our kids have a lot of social time with other people, and that's important for their growth and for their understanding of the world and for their, their social growth. So, are there any other questions that we have? Okay. I'm so thankful that you all joined me. I'm thankful for the questions. Hopefully I helped answer some questions. Hopefully the people who are starting this homeschooling journey and are nervous are maybe a little bit less nervous. Feel free to message us or comment or anything. I'm happy to answer questions. And again, I don't have it all figured out. I'm just hopefully giving you some things that I've learned along the way. So again, my husband and I have a podcast called Marriage by Design. If you want to check